The Wild West, when we think of it, images of lawless towns, shootouts at high noon, and rugged cowboys come to mind. But was it really as dangerous as Hollywood wants you to believe? Stick around, because the truth might just surprise you. And trust me, you'll want to hang on until the end because it's not all gunslingers and desperados. First off, let's set the scene. The Wild West, roughly from the 1860s to the 1890s, was a time when settlers headed west to chase dreams of gold, land, and opportunity. But while the movies make it look like everyone was constantly dodging bullets, the reality? Most people were more likely to die from bad chili than a gunfight. That's right, outlaws and bandits were a thing, sure, but they were outnumbered by farmers, miners, and folks just trying to survive the harsh conditions of the frontier. Now, don't get me wrong, life wasn't easy, but was it that dangerous? Let's take a closer look. Let's delve into the mythic gunfights and the real violence of the Wild West. Famous names like Wyatt Earp, Billy the Kid, and Jesse James dominate our imaginations. These guys were the celebrities of their time. And yes, their stories were often as polished as a new sheriff's badge. Hollywood would have you believe that every town was just a fuse away from exploding into gunfire at high noon. But how often did these showdowns actually happen? Well, not as often as you might think. Most frontier towns were keen on keeping the peace. Many had laws that were stricter than the saloon's no-spitting rule. That's right, in many places, you'd hand over your gun to the sheriff faster than you could slap leather. These towns were more about order than chaos, and shootouts were as rare as a quiet saloon on payday. But let's not paint too rosy a picture. While not an everyday affair, violence did erupt, and when it did, it could be brutal. Take the infamous OK Corral shootout, for example. This 30-second clash between lawmen and outlaws left 3 men dead and several wounded, echoing the potential for violence if tensions did boil over. More significantly, the largest instances of violence often involved not just individuals, but the state itself. As settlers pushed westward, they encroached on Native American territories, leading to inevitable conflicts. What's often glossed over in tales of cowboy bravery is that many of these conflicts, like the Battle of the Little Bighorn, involved the U.S. Army. These were not mere skirmishes, but large-scale confrontations, where the main actors were government troops, not lone gunslingers or outlaw bands. In these encounters, the violence was not the stuff of dual legends, but the harsh reality of a country expanding at the expense of its original inhabitants. This aspect of the Wild West was as significant as any gunfight, highlighting the broader and often more devastating impacts of frontier expansion. So, if gunfights weren't the daily special, what was the real kicker? Here's where things get wilder than a saloon brawl. The true perils: disease, starvation, and, yup, you guessed it, Mother Nature herself. Imagine trekking through untamed wilderness, praying you don't catch cholera, or that your food doesn't run out. Crossing the plains wasn't your average road trip. It was a brutal test of survival. And the winters? Let's just say frostbite didn't care if you were the toughest cowboy or the quickest draw. As for the wildlife, those buffalo weren't exactly the cuddly type, and the only tweets heard were probably from a bird or a man about to meet his maker. Not to mention, snakes and horse accidents claimed more lives than any famed outlaw. Romantic, isn't it? So how dangerous was the Wild West, really? Well, it was more about survival than shootouts. Sure, there were outlaws, but most folks were just trying to make it day by day, building homes, starting families, and yes, sometimes running into a bit of trouble along the way. And if you're still curious about what really made the West so wild, check out our video on Wild West hygiene horrors.